Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Hypnotica with Chantel and Melissa. Today, we're talking about rupture and repair, something that we have a lot of experience with. So, Melissa, take it away. What would you like to say about rupture and repair?
I feel like repairing after a rupture in a relationship is one of the most important skills that we can develop as humans. Like everyone wants, good communication. Like I just want a partner who communicates well. And when we break that down, what exactly does that mean? And I know it's different for everyone. In my personal lived experience, it's been getting through the prickly moments in the conflict with as much ease and grace as possible. And it's always like the trickiest parts of relationships, because when everything's good, everything is flowing, the conversation's usually flowing, like things are just easy. But when there is a conflict, a lot of our little kid parts get triggered. We get triggered, we react instead of respond. We generally lose connection to ourselves and connection to our partners. And then again, when that happens, we say things we don't mean, we say things we regret, we don't listen to our partners, we don't feel heard. Like it can be a whole disaster. If we stay in those patterns and our partner stays in those patterns, as the relationship continues, things escalate and get bigger faster. So the feelings that come from all of that make us feel not heard, not seen, not loved. And so if we're carrying that energy throughout the relationship, it's easy to just be like, you know what, fuck it, and like walk away. So then the question of how do we repair after a rupture? And again, this can be different for everyone. So I'm just going to speak for myself here. So take what you want, leave the rest. I am very clear on what my triggers are. Not that I don't have blind spots, but I know what my triggers are and what will get me going the fastest. And in that, I generally know what I need in those moments. Sometimes if I get too heated, I need to take some space. I will usually say to my partner, I need X amount of time or X amount of space, and I'll come back to you after this amount of time. I also expect that from my partners because I need that. So I will ask for it too. Like if you need to take space, take it, but please let me know when you're coming back. As conflict is happening, where it gets really uncomfortable and like all the prickly parts and the triggered parts are up, I do my absolute best to slow down and really listen to what's being said, not what I think is being said or what I'm assuming, but listening to what's actually being said. Sometimes I repeat it back to my partner. I'm like, okay, I'm hearing you say this, this, and this. Is that correct? To get confirmation that I'm hearing properly. And then speaking from my perspective, using the I statements, like, well, I felt this, I feel this when you say this, or when you're saying this, it makes me feel this way, and that's what I'm reacting to. It's not necessarily you. It's usually some button that got pushed that's been there since I was 3. I don't know, right? So it's like just communicating where I'm coming from. And in doing that, if both parties can stay present, like this happened to me recently with my partner where I could see some prickly things happening and both of us were starting to get like just a little heated. I felt, because he was doing the same exact thing for me, he was saying like, what I'm hearing you say is this, and I'm confirming like, yes. But I'm like, where is some wires are getting crossed because he is hearing me and I feel heard. So like, what's going on? I was able to stay calm enough because I felt heard and cared for and respected to be like, oh, he's seeing this one incident. I'm seeing a big picture thing. And so that's where things are getting, like the wires are getting crossed. And when I pointed that out and he saw that, we're like, oh, well, it's happening because of this. The lens that he's looking at life through is because of his lived experience. The same is true for me. they're very different lived experiences. So things were able to resolve very quickly because we were both able to stay in our adult, not our little kid parts, and then communicate from a place of love and compassion and empathy. And then after that, there's a feeling of greater intimacy and closeness and connection, which is ultimately what we're after, right?
Yeah, it builds a trust, right?
Exactly. Yes. But Chantel, you gotta tell everybody your analogy. The car story.
Okay, yeah.
So
So
good.
we were talking before we pressed record, and the analogy I came
Mhm.
up with was, let's say you've never driven before, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a car in the middle of a big city during rush hour traffic, and your partner is in the seat next to you in the passenger seat. And you're freaking out, like panicking, like needing to navigate this, wanting the support of your partner. And they're just there, like not in the same trance as you at all, in their own little world. And they're like, well, I can drive fine. Like, what's the big deal? Like, why are you so upset? Like, and yeah, so it makes the person who's having to navigate this thing for the first time super, like, like afraid that if it happens again, if they find themselves in a situation like that again, that their partner just like won't understand that they're not okay, and they need help and support through it. That's my analogy.
So good. So good. Yeah, it not feeling heard, especially when we're having heightened emotions, feels so isolating. Especially with your partner, the person who is supposed to want to understand and want to know about your lived experience and then is not paying attention. It's
Yeah, like I
isolating.
don't mind, like I'm not asking my partner to like become the storm with me or get all
Mm-hmm.
upset also. I
Truth.
just need my partner to be that like strong supportive rock and like an emotional
Mm-hmm.
support person, and like validate my feelings and be there like as much as they possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's a fine line, expectations in a relationship, because I know that expectations can like kill a relationship if they're too high and impossible, right?
Mm-hmm.
um but also like settling for the bare minimum and breadcrumbs is also not fine. So I'm
Truth.
learning a lot lately about like spectrums and balance and the Tao, and just basically that everything is a spectrum and
Mm-hmm.
everything needs balance, right? Like with food too, right? Like eating all the food all the time, obviously not healthy. Eating no food ever, not healthy, right? Like there's a
Yep.
healthy balance, and we're always on the spectrum somewhere. And
Mm-hmm.
so with expectations, I think it's also a balance. I try my best not to like make my partner responsible for my happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I feel like they hold a different place than like your typical friend that you'd go for coffee with once every couple months and pick up where you left off. Like
Mm-hmm.
a partner is the person that, your day-to-day stuff is shared with. And that's that's what you kind of it's the unwritten agreement in my
It is.
in my mind.
Same. Yes, I feel the same way. Absolutely. Like, no one is responsible for our happiness, and I would like my relationship to contribute to my happiness. Same thing with my friendships too, but the partner, it's a different type of intimacy. Yeah.
Yeah. And like in any relationship, with family, friendship, significant other, um, like I feel that when you're triggered, you're not really a safe person to be around. Like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that's just the way it is.
Yes.
And sometimes when one person triggers another, the person that's triggered feels like it's the other person's responsibility to make them feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel like that's the case. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
processing it on your own or with someone else is probably a whole lot smarter than trying to make the other person like make it all better, because it's not their fault. Like if you're triggered, that means something from your past is showing up. Like the scab was scratched off and it's bleeding now, right? Like you're
Yes.
you're there and you're bleeding, and like yes, you need help, but at the same time you're not necessarily going to be the most rational person if you're wounded like that, because you're freaking out. So
Mhm.
it's like you need a you need a I don't know, not expect the other person to make everything all better.
Yes.
And it's just really nice to be validated, like, yes, I see you're bleeding, like
Yes.
even though I'm not bleeding, I see that you are
Exactly.
emotionally.
Yes.
Yeah. To me, that's the biggest thing with rupture and repair. It's sometimes tricky too with someone who is very scared of conflict, like I
Mhm.
am.
Same.
um
Yep.
I need to feel in a safe container. I like the word container, but it's just
Mhm.
the word container. My definition right now is like set aside a time and a place where nothing else is like interrupting, like ringers are off, where I can come to you and say some things, and I don't want you to be defensive. And I don't want you to
Mhm.
say that my feelings weren't legit. I don't want you to, say I was overreacting. I just want to be heard. And
Yes.
I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to acknowledge it, that
Mhm.
it happened. That's all.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. So I feel like a big part of the repair process is to, like, nobody's perfect. Nobody expects the other person to be perfect. But to acknowledge, like, hey, maybe I could have been more supportive for you, and I hope to do
Mhm.
better next time. I don't want you to be bleeding and have nobody come there and help you. I don't want you to be stuck in traffic without knowing how to navigate, without me trying my best to support you. Like, I just need that reassurance that next
Mhm.
time there's going to be some support there without having to beg for it. But
Exactly.
there is
Yeah.
something to be said about being clear with your expectations too, and saying what you need.
Mhm.
Like nobody's a mind reader. Like to just give someone the silent treatment and them not having any
Yeah.
clue why you're triggered or what they can do to help, like that's not helpful for anybody. So
Mhm.
communicating like, hey, like whatever it is, even if it's like a drink of water, like you ask for what you need in the moment, or you ask for space and ask to come back and talk about it, or ask for a phone call at the end of the day, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep. Ah, I do try to lead with whatever it is I need, where I'm like, I need you to just listen right now, or I need some reassurance. I need you, I need your opinion on this. I need you to tell me how you feel about this when I bring this up. I try to start with that. It doesn't always go that way, but it's like that way they know, like the person knows they don't have to, yeah, they don't have to guess. Because I've also had the experience where if I'm talking about something that's upsetting me, my partner, not my current partner, but I've had partners in the past, what they end up hearing me say is they're not enough and they're failing. And I'm like, I'm not saying that you're failing. You're not failing. Me saying I need doesn't mean that you fucked up or that you're failing. I'm just telling you about myself and what's important to me to function well in this relationship. But in the past, I've had people react to like what they're hearing when they're like, I'm failing, and that's what they react to. And that makes me feel not seen, not heard. And then I get reactive or I shut down.
Yeah,
It's a
so
mess.
much trouble could be like saved if
Hmm.
people didn't get defensive. And no, I'm not saying that they have to like take the brunt of everything. I'm not saying that at
Hmm.
all. I'm just saying a little validation of the other person's feelings would
Yes.
come would say a lot. And even like not necessarily apologizing for, making the other person feel bad, but just like I'm sorry that, it happened, or, some kind of remorse that you got hurt. Like if it was a
Yes.
physical ailment,
Yeah.
right? Like
Right.
if somebody broke their leg, you wouldn't
Hmm.
have someone coming in there being all defensive. Like I would hope not, right? Like they would be like, "Oh, I'm really sorry this happened to you."
Yes.
Like a little apology, even if they didn't break your leg, goes a long
Hmm.
way.
It does. Absolutely.
And
Yes.
asking for clarity too is just so helpful because it's just like our words don't always mean the same thing.
Mhm.
Like even if we think they do and the dictionary definition has certain definitions, out behind each important word is like a whole story, and our stories are different. And so asking just like, when you said this and this, what did you mean? Or did you mean this and this by, asking for clarity
Mhm.
can help with a lot of misunderstandings. And also like getting to the bottom of a trigger and like going to therapy for it and being like taking responsibility for like, yeah, I have this um whatever it is, like fear of rejection, and I felt
Mhm.
rejected, and that's why I reacted so, like intensely about this, and that's why I was
Yep.
having feelings all week. Like it was a big deal to me. um yeah, just a little
Mhm.
clarity.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Trying to think if there's anything I left out. I did some research recently about like what not to do in a trigger, and it's like, don't try and process it with the person that hurt you. I mean, we hear that with
Mhm.
parents too, like, like don't try to go to your parents and have them make everything better for your childhood. Like,
Right.
like that's not going to
Yes.
go over well.
No. Mm-mm.
You have to process it with like a therapist or a friend or someone else. Like, also to like make sure that you, as much as you can, are returning to an emotional state, like where your central nervous system is
Yeah.
okay before communicating. Like don't try to process a trigger with a person that hurt you. What was the other things? There was like a bunch of things that I was just like, oh yeah, like I'd forgotten about that. I'll have to bring a list next
Yeah.
time, but like it's it's not the things that people typically do, but it's like the more mature way to handle things so that we don't go to war. Like,
Basically, yep.
yeah, because like that's not what we're here for. That's not what we stand for. We want connection in the end. We want understanding. We don't want to go to war. And we do
Mhm.
that when we misunderstand the other person and think that they're coming for us when they're really not. They're just hurt.
Exactly. Yes. Definitely. It's
Anything
so
else
hard.
that you want to add? Especially about like what to do in a trigger or what not to do in a trigger. Like what have you learned from your past?
Mm. I have a list what I do when I'm triggered. I this isn't this doesn't get to happen like perfectly, like depending on where I'm physically at or what is actually going on. But the list, and it doesn't always happen in this order either, but the list is recognizing that, like, okay, I'm really upset. And like, why am I upset? What is this reminding me of? Getting clear on that. I need to write and run and usually talk to a friend and calm down. I had an acupuncturist tell me it takes us about 20 minutes to calm down from like this heightened, like triggered state. So I also try, especially if I'm with another person, like we get some space from that person. Give me 20 minutes at least, depending on the magnitude of the trigger. But I will still, even if I've repaired with the person or I've calmed down, I still have to go through like I had to talk to a friend, I gotta write, I gotta run, I gotta like move my body in some kind of way. That I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to add to that. But that's mm, yeah, that's generally how I do the
Yeah.
thing.
And coming into the arena with the seeking to understand attitude versus the I'm right, you're wrong attitude
Mhm.
is huge.
Mhm.
And also like when someone is a storm, it's really nice when the other person could be the rock,
Yes.
like, or the lighthouse or whatever, the one that's just there, like there for you. Like, I hear you, I see you, I hear you, I'm holding space for you. Like, that's
Mhm.
all they really need. Like, I'm not saying to take on like responsibility for someone's happiness. It's not the same thing. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like not leaving them alone to, you know, figure out what they can't figure out. Because when you're in a trigger,
Yes.
like you just feel a little lost.
Yes.
And writing does
Exactly.
help me a lot too, to like figure out what I'm thinking and how to move forward and what's the next step, and to try and move from my head to my heart, because like the mind is always in duality. It's like the right and wrong, the black and white, the good, the bad, right? But the heart has this way of like where love can conquer all and be understanding, and yeah, see something from the other person's point of view. And the
Mm-hmm.
mind the mind struggles with that a lot.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about rupture and repair. It's a big thing. Sometimes people get broken up with and they wonder why. And it's not one
Hmm.
thing. It's a multitude of ruptures happening and them just checking out emotionally and not being there for the
Yes.
other person. And like that's the main thing that people get into a relationship for, is when I'm not okay, is the other person going to be there for me?
That's right. Hmm.
So, yeah, take note.
Yep. Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's all I have too on this subject. It's just mindfulness, knowing yourself, knowing your needs, your triggers, and communicating in a way that you would like to be communicated with. Like, yeah. All right, y'all. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we will see you soon.
Bye.